Tao and virtue. To begin with Tao, the etymology of the Chinese graph or character suggests a pathway or heading in a certain direction along a path. Most commentators agree in translating Tao as way. In early Chinese literature, Tao generally depicts a relatively wide thoroughfare or carriage way, and in some contexts waterways, but it is used also to convey what is deemed the right or proper course, and by extension the doctrines or teachings that set forth such a course, or the means and methods that would bring it about. Laozi 53, for example, states, "The great Tao is very even, flat, easy to travel on, but people-like, to take by ways, jing." The literal sense of Tao as a path, contrasted in this instance with jing, a small trail off the main road, is clearly preserved here, but it is also easy to see how it can be used as a metaphor, how the extended ethical and spiritual sense of Tao comes into the picture. As a verb, perhaps on account of the directionality involved, Tao also conveys the sense of speaking. Thus, the opening phrase of chapter 1, Dao Kitao, literally Tao that can be Daoed, is often rendered, the way that can be spoken of. Because Tao is paired with name, Ming in the next line. Ming ke Ming, the name that can be named. Forming a parallel couplet construction, there is thus reason to interpret the verbal usage in the sense of something verbalized, as opposed to a pathway that is traveled on, trodden, or followed. This is also how most commentators in traditional China have understood it. The many normative discourses that clamor to represent the right way are seen to be fickle, partial, and misleading. In most English translations, the capitalized form, Wei or Dao or Tao, is used to distinguish it from other usages of the term. The concept of Tao is not unique to the Laozi. A key term in the philosophical vocabulary, it informs early Chinese philosophy as a whole. It is interpreted differently, signifying a means to a higher end in some writings and as an end in itself in others. The Laozi underscores both the ineffability and creative power of Tao. This is distinctive, and if one accepts the early provenance of the text, charts a new course in the development of Chinese philosophy. The ineffability of Tao is highlighted in Chapter 1, The Constant, Chang, also translated as eternal, e.g. W.T. Chain 1963. Tao cannot be defined or described, it is nameless. Chapter 14 brings out clearly that Tao transcends sensory perception. It has neither shape nor form. Nameless and formless, Tao can only be described as utterly profound, and in this sense dark or mysterious. Suan, or as Wu, literally not having any name, form, or other characteristics of things. See also Chase 21 and 32. Indeed, though suggestive, the term Tao itself is no more than a symbol, as the Laozi makes clear. I do not know its name, I style it Tao. Che 25, see also Che 34. This suggests a sense of radical transcendence, which explains why the Laozi has been approached so often as a mystical text. The concept of Wu is difficult and has been translated variously as nothing, nothingness, or non-being. It marks not only the mystery of Tao, but also its limitlessness or inexhaustibility, e.g. Che 4. Names serve to delimit, to set boundaries. In contrast, Tao is without limits and therefore cannot be captured fully by language. This suggests a positive dimension to transcendence, which brings into view the creative power of Tao. All things under heaven are born of being. Yu being is born of Wu. Che 40. What does this mean? Elsewhere in the Laozi, Tao is said to be the beginning of all things. Ches 1:25. Taoist creation involves a process of differentiation from unity to multiplicity. Tao gives birth to 1, 1 gives birth to 2, 2 gives birth to 3, 3 gives birth to the 10,000 things. Che 42. The text does not indicate tense or spell out what the numbers refer to. Is it saying that something called the one produced or produces the two in the sense of two other things? The nothingness of Tao helps impose certain constraints on interpretation. The idea of a creator God with attributes, like the Lord on high, Shangdi in ancient Chinese religion, does not seem to fit with the emphasis on transcendence. The dominant interpretation in traditional China is that Tao represents the source of the original, undifferentiated, essential Qi energy, the One, which in turn produces the yin and yang cosmic forces. While the lighter, more rarefied yang energy stuff rises to form heaven, the heavier yin solidifies to become earth. A further blending of the two generates a harmonious Qi energy that informs human beings. This is essentially the reading of the Heshangong commentary. Although the Laozi may not have entertained a fully developed yin-yang cosmological theory, which took shape during the Han period, it does suggest at one point that natural phenomena are constituted by yin and yang, the 10,000 things, or myriad creatures, as it rather lyrically puts it, carry yin on their backs and embrace yang with their arms. Che 42. That which gave rise to the original Qi energy, however, is indescribable. The Laozi calls it Tao, or perhaps more appropriately in this context, the Tao with the definite article, to signal its presence as the source of the created order. In modern terms, minus the language of yin-yang cosmology, this translates into an understanding of the Tao as an absolute entity, which is the source of the universe. As the Oxford English Dictionary, online edition, under Tao defines it, not being anything in particular, the Tao may be described as nothing. Wu. However, on this reading, Wu does not mean nothingness, negativity, or absence in the nihilistic sense, in view of the creative power of the Tao. Alternatively, one could argue that Tao signifies a conceptually necessary ontological ground. It does not refer to any indescribable original substance or energy. Beginning is not a term of temporal reference but suggests ontological priority in the Laozi. The process of creation does proceed from unity to multiplicity, but the Laozi is only concerned to show that two would be impossible without the idea of one. The assertion in Laozi 42, one gives birth to two, affirms that duality presupposes unity to render it as the one gave birth to the two, is to turn what is essentially a logical relation into a cosmological event. As the source of being, Tao cannot be itself a being, no matter how powerful or perfect otherwise. The problem of infinite regress cannot be overcome. For this reason, the Laozi makes use of the concept of Wu, non-being, not to suggest a substance or something of which nothing can be said, but to signify the conceptual otherness and radical transcendence of the ground of being. This agrees with Wang Bai's interpretation. If Wu points to a necessary ontological foundation, the distinction between Tao and One seems redundant. Commenting on chapter 42 of the Laozi, Wang Bai writes, "One can be said to be Wu. One is the beginning of numbers and the ultimate of things." Commentary on Che 39. See also Wang's commentary on the Yijing Trans, in Lin 1994, 60. The concept of One and the concept of Wu thus complement each other in disclosing different aspects of the logic of creation. Both unity and non-being are necessary for understanding the generation of beings. 1-2. Comparing the two interpretations, whereas the first, cosmological reading has to explain the sense in which the Tao can be said to be nothing. The second emphasizes the centrality of Wu, non-being, for which Tao is but one designation. For the latter, Tao is entirely conceptual, whereas the former envisages the Tao as referring to a mysterious substance or energy that brings about the cosmos and continues to sustain and regulate it. Depending on the interpretation, Wu may be translated as nothing or non-being accordingly. The latter may be awkward, but it serves to alert the reader that the nothingness or emptiness of Tao may not be understood referentially or reduced simply to the fullness of Qi. In light of the interest in cosmology during the Warring States period, the cosmological reading may be privileged, but the Laozi is also open to an ontological interpretation. Both are philosophically potent. At one level, the ontological reading may accommodate the Qi-based yin-yang cosmology, although there is significant divergence in the interpretation of the ethics of the Laozi, as we shall see in the next section. In either case, the metaphor of Tao is apt. It shows that all things are derived ultimately from an absolute beginning in either sense of the word, like the start of a pathway. It also suggests a direction to be followed, which brings out the ethical interest of the Laozi. The Tao De Jing is concerned with both Tao and Di. The graph De has also made it into the Oxford English Dictionary in Taoism, the essence of Tao inherent in all beings in Confucianism and in extended use moral virtue. Di has been translated variously as virtue, potency, efficacy, integrity, or power. For an etymological study, see Nivison 197879 and Hall and Ames 1987, 216. Like Tao De is a general concept open to diverse interpretation. The Confucian understanding of Di is by no means uniform. A. Chan 2011. While some early Ru scholars emphasize in their interpretation of virtue the roles and responsibilities embedded in the network of kinship ties and sociopolitical relationships that constitute the ethical realm, others focus on the formation of individual moral character through self-cultivation. Confucius may have emphasized the latter, but there is ample evidence in the Analects and other Confucian works testifying to the importance of the former as well. The Laozi seems to be suggesting a higher Di against any moral achievement attained through repeated effort, e.g., Che, 38. The different translations mentioned above aim at bringing out the perceived uniquely Taoist understanding of Di. Admittedly, virtue is ambiguous, and in Latin, as many scholars have noted, virtus has more to do with strength and capacity than moral virtues. Nevertheless, there are advantages to translating Di as virtue, as it keeps in the foreground that the Laozi is giving new meaning to an established concept, as opposed to introducing a new concept not found in other schools of Chinese philosophy. From this perspective, both Laozi and Confucius are interpreters of Di virtue. The marriage of Tao and Di effectively bridges the gap between transcendence and immanence. Traditional commentaries, beginning with the Hanfizi, often play on the homonymic relation between Di, virtue, and another graph also pronounced Di, which means to acquire or obtain something. Di is thus what one has obtained from the Tao, a latent power by virtue of which any being becomes what it is. Wali 1958, 32. In this sense, the Laozi speaks of Di as that which nourishes all beings, e.g., Che, 51. Within these parameters, interpretations of Di follow from the understanding of Tao and Wu. On the one hand, for He Shanggong and other proponents of the cosmological view, what one has obtained from the Tao refers specifically to one's Qi endowment, which determines one's physical, intellectual, affective, moral, and spiritual capacity. Read this way, the title Tao De Jing should be translated as the classic of the way and its virtue, given that Di is understood to have emanated from the Tao. On the other hand, for Wang Bai and others who do not subscribe to a substantive view of Tao, Di represents what is genuine or authentic, Zhen in human beings. E.g., see Wang Bai's commentary on Laozi Chase, 3, 5, 16, 51. Because Wu does not refer to any substance or cosmological power, what the Laozi means by Di, the virtue that one has obtained from Tao, can only be understood as what is originally naturally present in human beings. In either case, the concept of Di emerges as a Taoist response to the question of human nature, which was one of the most contested issues in early Chinese philosophy. The two readings of the Laozi, despite their differences, agree that it is an inherent Di that enables a person to conform to the way in which Tao operates. Virtue may be corrupted easily, but when realized, it radiates the full embodiment of the Tao understood in terms of Qi on He Shanggong's view, or the flourishing of authenticity on Wang Bai's interpretation. As such, Tao points to not only the beginning but also through the end of all things. Thank you for watching. If you found this video insightful, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to our channel for more thought-provoking content. We love hearing from you, so drop a comment below with your thoughts or any questions you have. Your feedback helps us create better content for you. See you in the next video.